Great. Welcome to the Multifamily Investment Community Meetup. I'm your host, Andy Benz. I am the principal at Blue Horizon Investments. We help busy people invest passively in real estate through syndication. Today, we have a special guest, Sandhya Seshadri. I have a few things before I let her kick off. Just some housekeeping. She's going to walk through. She's got a presentation, talk about 0 to your first million in multifamily. There are no dumb questions. Participate at the end. I'll open, I guess, even along the way. Sandhya, you're okay with that? Questions along the way?
Yes, I am.
And then when you're done with the meetup, you'll get a survey from meetup.com. Give your feedback, please. That helps me, helps the group grow. That's just a great thing that you can do for me. I would appreciate it. So let me just tell you a little bit about Sandhya. So she has invested as a limited partner, key principal or general partner in over 4,000 doors, totaling 300 million in assets throughout the United States. Sandhya has been a leader in the equities market for over 20 years and has moved into commercial real estate due to the tax advantages and the ability to uniquely force appreciation each asset. It's become her mission to help other people capitalize on all the benefits of real estate investing. And I'll let you tell her story. I guess to kick it off, Sandhya, can you tell us how you got started in real estate?
Yes, for sure. So I, like most of the Asian geeks you might have met in your life, I'm an engineer. Math was my favorite subject, and I went to college, got my degree, got a corporate job, realized pretty quickly into that job that all the decisions were being made by business folks who have all the sales and marketing experience. They're not really technical, but they're telling all of us, these technical people who've gone to all this college, difficult engineering college, telling us what we should be doing. So I was like, how do they make those decisions? So then I went back part-time for my evening and weekend MBA program to understand, accounting and finance and business plans and how you price something. You don't just price something based on, okay, it cost me $100, I'll make a 20% profit and I'm going to sell it for $120. That's how I used to think. And instead, your sales and marketing types look at it and say, oh no, that's, 1,000 songs in a pocket. You used to carry a big boombox and now it's 1,000 songs in a pocket. What's the value for that? That's not $120, that's thousands of dollars, right? So the whole, it was a completely out of the box, different way of thinking and pricing and all of that. So once I got that business and marketing knowledge, I went into the stock market, had kids along the way and decided, okay, stock market full-time. But then I wanted something that gives me tax advantages. And I always wanted to have something to do with real estate, but I was not handy with, the whole tenants, toilets, trash, termites, leasing, all of that. I did not have a handy person's background. I didn't grow up with a dad who used to fix things around the house. So I had no clue. And I was always afraid if I had a single family rental, I'm going to get ripped off by some handy person coming in and saying, okay, you're going to be charged $1,000 for this repair. And I wouldn't have a clue. So stayed away because of that reason from anything to do with rentals that I have to self-manage. Then I attended a weekend event because a friend told me there's multifamily and you can scale up and you don't have to do all that. You can employ a team to do that for you. So I attended a weekend webinar and got hooked, and I ended up joining a mentoring program. And that mentoring program was all focused on Dallas multifamily because Dallas is my network, is my area that I know well. So I wanted to have a team of people whose expertise was also in the local market and what works in this local market. We're well networked with the brokers and all the players in this market. So it's like, I think of mentoring programs as paying for a country club membership. It's up to you to go to the country club often and network and make things happen within that. Your fee is just for that admission. Now you can walk through the doors of that country club. What you do with it is different for every person. So I realized that pretty quickly and started networking with people. So, just like this, I would attend, meetings, meetups and say, who am I? Who really resonates with me? Who do I think is a future, either potential partner or mentor? And then I had retirement money from my corporate world that I rolled into an IRA and then used that to invest passively. And that helped me network with a lot of syndicators who are doing the things that I want to be doing. So that's very important, is to go after people and network with the people who are doing what you want to be doing one day. And that's how you build a connection. So even in my passive investments, they were intentional. They were intentionally towards people from whose brain I wanted to pick or who I wanted to follow and see what they do with these properties to learn from that experience. And that's how I ended up finding partners within that group to do my first syndication. And again, I did not have the confidence to run a property by myself. Having had no real estate background, I didn't want to take on all the risk, especially when you sign a loan and you take other people's money, right? I wanted the protection of someone who's done it before to be making all the major decisions the first time around. So, I started out in terms of the analogy I use is, first I was a passenger on a flight. So I bought my ticket, I knew the route, I knew my destination. I was happy to sit back and enjoy the ride once I vetted the pilot and the airline, et cetera, right? Now I'm like, oh, I'm interested in flying. So I became a co-pilot by, hanging out with these partners who knew what they were doing. And then finally, now I'm a lead sponsor on the pilot, and I take on new folks who want to learn the business from me. So I had a question in the chat box. My first deal was 86 doors, $6.75 million. I think I invested my own money of about 150,000, somewhere in that range. I think 140 or 150, I don't remember exactly when. It was around that much. And so I definitely put my money where my mouth is, and there was no acquisition fee involved in my first deal. So I really had a financial risk in the deal. And the reason I had that kind of money is because I had worked for a long time in the corporate world and I had saved up money. And so I reallocated money from my stock portfolio into real estate and decided I don't want to put 100% of my funds in the stock market, and I wanted to move some over to real estate. So I was not doing this in my 20s. I'm not going to tell you my age, but let's just say I was no spring chicken when I started. So it's very different when it's someone young in their 20s starting out. They may not have that kind of funds, and you don't need that to start out. But I wanted to take the risk of both financial as well as everything else. I wanted to go all into my first deal. I really believed in the deal, the market, et cetera. And that was in August of 2019 that we closed on that deal. And now we're in September 2021. The deal is under contract to be sold. It should close in October. And what is fantastic about that is the passive investors will be more than doubling their money in a matter of 25 or 26 months. And that's not typical. I would say about half of that profit is because of just the crazy cap rate compression and market appreciation we've seen in the Dallas area. But then the other half of it is that all the strategies work, the NOI has improved. So if cap rates remain the same as what they were today, instead of compressing, my investors might only have made 60 or 70% on their investment. So 100K would have become 160 or 170K instead of 210K, for example. But it definitely went in the right direction, thanks to my experienced partners who were both out of state. And I served as boots on the ground, being the local in Dallas. So every time a vendor was going to show up on property, I would drop my kids in school and I'd be at the property, because that was my way of learning. With no real estate background prior to that, this was my way of learning and getting to know the business so that I could one day be on my own to do the same thing.
Sandhya, you bring up a good point about the passive investing first and getting your feet wet and understanding how these go and seeing the prospectus and understanding the entire the deal and getting to know those sponsors. And then finally, after a few of those, you get comfortable, and then you're like, you know what, I can do this, and I can, help somebody else out. So you're spot on with that. So I appreciate that. So do you have one team that you work with? Are you working with those same partners, or do you have different team members that you work with on different deals?
I have different team members because, again, it's like the country club. The first time around, this team worked, and then they went on to do many deals in different states. And I was not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable doing a deal in Minnesota and then Tennessee, and then something in New Mexico, et cetera. That was too much for me in Alabama. Okay, I'm not, nationwide. I'm just good old little Dallas. So I met other people, and it's a matter of actually my second deal, I got invited by somebody else. So to join them on the deal. This first deal, I literally chased after these guys and said, please take me on. I can be so useful to you, kind of thing. Versus the second deal, they were like, hey, you're here. You want to do this? I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? I need something to close in 2020. So That's how I got it. So again, belonging to this network and country club really helped me, because you put the word out and all the who's, they kind of know, oh yeah, she's looking for something that closes this year. And that kind of thing. So when there's a match, right, of what you are looking for and what someone else is looking for, that makes for a good mesh. But don't do business with someone you just met, right? You obviously should have known them through the network anyway. Like that's how I never just met somebody and 1 minute later, decided, okay, it makes sense for us to partner. These were people I already knew from the network, had a reputation. We probably had like at least 500 common friends kind of network. And only then you join and do business, because when you sign loans together, you sponsor deals together. I call it a business marriage, and you want to date first, because you really want to make sure you all get along well, and do business the same way. You think financially the same way. Your values are the same, right? If someone wants to just go on increasing rents and never show up at the property, etc., that doesn't jive with me. Versus, I want to be involved in my properties. I like to do a community event every other month or so. And like, I like to do a free Thanksgiving turkey and things like that. So they have to be comfortable enough to let me do what I like to do. And it has to jive with their values as well. So I'm more hands-on than the typical investor. So you got to make sure your team's good with that. Mm-hmm. So be very careful who you partner with. And the idea of doing a passive investing first before getting active, for me, reduced my risk. It also helped me learn the business. And you don't have to sign loans. You don't have to worry about all the headaches of a tenant's toilet's trash, but also getting sued by your tenant, or a unit catches fire. Or we had what's called a snowmageddon. We had a big snowstorm in the middle of COVID in February in Dallas, right? And you have units down, you have burst pipes, you have tenants to displace, right? All of those kind of things you don't have to worry about if you're doing a passive investment. And all of us, believe it or not, are passive investors. We invest passively in the stock market, all right? You buy some Amazon stock and you hope it goes up, and you have no say in how it's run. So you are a passive investor. You just now, in my case, I diverted money from the stocks a little bit into real estate. That's all I did. I still had a passive portfolio. It was just in the stock market. I didn't know I could be passive in real estate and get similar gains, if not better gains, and get tax advantages and get cash flow. So that was a great lesson for me, because now when I'm syndicating a deal and I talk to passive investors, I am totally like a passive investor, because that's how I started. I have 20 passive deals. That's way more than my active deals. So I think like a passive investor. So I already anticipate their questions. It's already in my presentations when I occasionally bring out a deal. So it makes you a better, I think, active syndicator if you've done at least one passive deal, because it makes you more, have more empathy for their hard-earned money. Like my first salary was $36,000. It takes a lot of years to add that up to $50,000 in savings. I probably saved maybe $3,000 in my first salary per year, right? So to get that up to $50,000 and then invest that kind of big money into a deal, it takes a lot. So having that empathy for your passive investor is so important. But if everyone here is trying to figure out how to get their first deal, I would say that the number one thing is, again, to figure out what your strengths are. What do you have to offer to an experienced syndicator to take you on as a partner? So my model was, I'm going to partner with someone with more experience than me, and I have to offer them something for them to take me on. For me, that was very important, because then when I went out to raise a little money, I could leverage their resume. Hey, guess what? I'm really active and I have all this time and energy to put into this property. But you don't have to worry that as a rookie, I'm going to make all the decisions, because I've got these two experienced partners out there overseeing everything, working on the business plan. They've done this before. And so I just leverage their resume to help me go out and present it with confidence to investors, right? So raising money is a piece of it that you can't really escape as a multifamily syndicator, because this is about the syndication model, whether you're doing apartments, mobile home parks, self-storage, anything. Syndication is about raising money and using other people's money to buy something bigger than what you can buy by yourself. I don't have the money to go buy a $20 million apartment. I might be able to afford a $200,000 house. But what's the disadvantage of buying a $200,000 house? It's a recourse loan, one tenant, If they leave, my income goes from 100% to zero. Or if they choose not to pay because of all these eviction laws and et cetera, tenant rights, versus 100 doors, $20 million, okay, or probably 150 doors. A couple of tenants don't pay, that's okay, that's already in my underwriting. 10 tenants don't pay, I have 10 vacant units, that's already in my underwriting, right? So that's the advantage of scaling up, but it also means that it's a team sport. You can't do it alone, you must have teams. It's also part of your fiduciary responsibility to your investors. What if you get hit by a bus? Somebody else has to take over and carry on, right? We must march on with the deal. So even in that way, you must have at least one other team member who can do some of the work that you are doing. So I always say 2 to 3 is a good number. Some teams are really large, but there's probably only a couple of people doing all the work primarily. There's 1 or 2 lead sponsors, and then there's a few extras who are coming in as either newbies to learn, or they're raising capital, but not really doing much afterwards, et cetera. So that's a typical syndication structure, right? You have what's called the general partners, and then you have limited partners. So limited partners is the same as passive investors, just like you and I in the stock market. We put our money, we hope it goes up, we cash out when we want. But the difference is in real estate, it's illiquid, meaning you don't get your money back next month if you want to by just saying, hey, E-Trade, go sell my stock, right? So the folks that you have trusted your money to, the general partners or sponsors, they are the ones who make that decision. So you have to be very, very sure of them. So whether you choose to invest passively or you want to partner with these folks actively, vetting the sponsor is the most important thing you can do, number one, when you get into investing. So how do you convince an experienced sponsor to take you on? What do you have to offer? So you got to be very honest about what you like to do and what you could be good at. So when I started out, it was 0 real estate experience. But what do I have? I can roll up my sleeves, put my kids in school, and then run to any property in Dallas. I can tell you anything you want to know about neighborhoods in Dallas. I'm also good with spreadsheets, so I learned how to underwrite. So I worked on the education part of it by paying a mentoring program. Now that's not necessary, but it's a really good way to get yourself educated on how to underwrite deals, right? If that's something you want to do. But if you say, oh, underwriting is not my strength, but I love talking to people. Okay, so then maybe you're the one who goes out and raises capital. Maybe you start working on your network of people you know, and each person refers you to a few more people, and you keep building that network of high net worth individuals. Why is that important? Because the typical syndication investment is in the range of $50,000. So this is not selling Boy Scouts popcorn, Girl Scout cookies, 25 bucks kind of level, right? So you got to go after the right people for whom that investment is not a huge sum, meaning it's a big amount for everybody. But if they're accredited investors, meaning they have a net worth of $1 million, then 50,000 is not a big deal for them, as it would be for someone whose annual income is 50,000, right? So that's what I mean by, finding the right network of people who are high net worth so that you can raise capital from them is a very useful skill. So let's say you want to syndicate a large deal in 6 months. And if there's nothing else you want to do but raising capital the next 6 months, you'll be just fine because there'll always be a need for capital. So if talking to people, discussing deals, discussing numbers is your strength, definitely work on raising capital. That's your number one quickest way to get into a deal. Just go to Andy, go to somebody here who's a syndicator and say, listen, I can bring in $2 million. Can you find me a good deal? And get to know them. And find these sponsors, get to know them and say, you know what? By March of next year, I'm going to be able to raise $1 million, $2 million, and I want to partner with you. And spend these next 6 months getting to know them, making sure you're aligned in your values, and say, this is my target, and keep in touch. Like every 2 to 3 weeks, have some kind of a conversation with them. Build that relationship so that by the time you're ready now with that capital that you can raise from your network, they have a deal and it's a perfect match. That's an easy way, not an easy way, but meaning that's a very straightforward way to get into a syndication, provided you can raise capital. And sometimes raising capital is also about speaking with confidence about the underwriting. So you have to learn the terminology. So definitely the education is a big piece of it. I'm going to show this book. This book is Raising Capital for Real Estate by Hunter Thompson. It's a fantastic book for anyone who wants to learn how to raise capital for syndications or for, ATM funds for that matter, or mobile home parks. So any kind of syndication, that's a great book to learn. Another book to learn the basics of syndication itself. I think this is one of our very popular books. It's the best ever apartment syndication book. It's by Joe Fairless. The first one, The Raising Capital, is by Hunter Thompson. So we can probably type that in the chat box so everybody knows. And then this other one is the best ever apartment syndication book is by Joe Fairless. These are very, very popular books that I bet most people have. If they're into apartment syndications, they probably read these books or have them in their library. And I think some of them might be available as audio as well. But these are some of the books where once you read a chapter, you don't just say, oh, I finished the book. It's not like a fiction storybook. It's where you read a chapter and you say, how am I going to apply this to myself? And you take some notes and you then put some action plan in place. And then you put some timelines in place, right? This is one of those kind of books, these two books, right? So you may have to read it several times and you may have to go back and refer to some chapters, but those are two of the best resources out there that are affordable that you could use to figure out not just your roles, but also how you get into a large multifamily syndication. Another big piece. Yes, Andy, did you want to say something?
Just a question. You were going to go on, but I was wondering when it comes to partners, and I'm thinking about. Can you tell us a little bit about other partners that you need to close a deal? So I'm thinking property managers, I'm thinking insurance. If you can kind of tell us a little bit about that too.
Yeah, so just like with a single family home purchase, you could do that by yourself and just have a loan broker, your bank, and you're kind of done. You get some inspectors to check the property, and then you're going to self-manage it, or maybe you employ a local property management company. When you take this whole thing from one home to 100 plus doors, right? It's a much larger scale, bigger endeavor. And now you're also doing something called, syndication, where you are raising money from other people. So you're basically offering a security for purchase with the intent of making money, just like the stock market, right? Amazon stock is offered to you for purchase. They are very much closely scrutinized by the SEC. So you're under SEC regulations when you go about raising money. It's not just you buying a single family home and it's all your money and the bank's money and that's it. And it's a recourse loan. And if you don't pay your debt, they can come after you. Well, in this case, you're taking other people's money. I have like 50, 100 investors sometimes in a deal, right? And each of them has trusted you with a large sum of money. So the SEC regulation side of it, you want to employ a syndication attorney who will come up with all the documents necessary, which outline the risks and how the deal is structured, the management structure, et cetera. So you definitely want and need a syndication attorney who can do all of that for you, because there's a whole set of investor documents that your investors will sign, and a private placement memorandum, et cetera, involved, a company agreement. They will have to sign a document called an investor suitability questionnaire. They'll have to specify if they're accredited or, sophisticated, non-accredited investors. There's definitions for all these terms. And so you want to really employ a lawyer who is familiar with the syndication model. You can't just go hire any lawyer. You need to find a specialized lawyer for the syndication model. That's one of your most important partners. The second thing is when it's over 100 doors, you're not going to be self-managing it. And that's the biggest benefits of syndication. You employ a third-party property management company. And so choosing them has to also be done. Like right now, we're interviewing several different property management companies because we have a budget and a business plan in mind, but the property management has to agree with that. They have to agree, oh, you're going to increase your rent by $50 by doing what? Oh, we don't think that's going to work in that market. You're going to do what? Reserved parking? No one's going to pay for that. Your property has ample parking. No one's going to pay extra for reserved parking. So all of those conversations around your business plan, how to run the property, their values, you have to pick a property management company for that. That's one of your most important partners. And a PMC, a property management company, you want to pick them who has ideally experience in that local market. You don't want to be the first so-called guinea pig, bringing in a property manager that's great in Atlanta and then bringing them into, I don't know, Michigan market. I'm just throwing that out as a random example, right? You want someone who has local experience because they really know the pulse of that property, that area, etc. So within a short, also, when let's say your leasing manager decides to leave the property, right? They just decide to resign and they're like, this job sucks, I'm gone. You can easily borrow other extra people from nearby when you have a property management company who already has other properties they're running in that area. Otherwise, you're kind of stuck. If this is their only one and they only have, 2 employees in there, it's going to be hard to share resources across. So find a company that's established in that local market. That's another partner. So lawyer, attorney, right? And then property management company, definitely your lender. You want to have a very strong relationship with a lender because a lender can save you thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in simple things like the loan terms. Especially this year in 2021, bridge loans are very popular. So you want to be careful about that. So there's just so many details to doing a syndication that at least for the first time, I highly recommend going with someone, partnering with someone with experience. Insurance is important. Insurance rates vary so much. So you want to find, again, a company that's insured other properties in that local market so that even though they have their rates, et cetera, might be more competitive because they may be nationwide, but if they've not really insured a bunch of properties, and when you talk to other syndicators in the area and they don't recommend that company, you really want to go by referrals. And another thing I kind of think of this as, okay, if I'm getting brain surgery done, I don't really want a newbie, right, to be doing their first brain surgery with me without another experienced surgeon also in the same room. I kind of think of syndication like that. So we're talking large sums of money. So I always recommend going with people who have strong referrals for all your service providers, as well as not being an investor, a passive investor in a syndication where everyone on the team has no experience doing multifamily, right? They should have some real estate background, or they should have a mentor or a team member in a consulting role, at least in that team, who's going to help them. So providers are property management company, insurance, your syndication attorney. You want someone, at least in Texas, to protest taxes. So you want to have a partner who can help you protest those property taxes, because otherwise, if you don't include that in your underwriting carefully and plan that, you could really lose money on a deal just from property taxes in Texas. So again, that's why there's little local nuances to every state and every location, for which it's better to ask or have a mentor who's got that local expertise. Who else did I miss in terms of service providers in your team? The lender I talked about. A lender, if you partner with the same lender, go back, give them repeat business. They will go to bat for you with those agencies, even with your bridge lenders especially, and then Fannies and Freddies, right? So I like bridge loans. Bridge loans are the most popular things this year. They give you better leverage. So Kathy had a question about bridge loans. I like bridge loans. My last deal is a bridge loan. The only thing you have to be careful about is you have to be very confident in your numbers. And because some bridge lenders, it's like the wild, wild west. When you're getting a Fannie loan, it doesn't matter whether you go through lender A or lender B. Ultimately, it's a Fannie loan. With a bridge lender, every lender is so different. Like Arbor does agency as well as bridge lending, or bridge investment group, or there's so many different bridge groups. Some of them are real easygoing in their, reporting structure to you after you close the deal. Some of them are so picky. But one thing to watch out for with bridge loans is that they will require you possibly to have what is called a lockbox. So every month when you collect rent, your property management collects rent, it goes into this one lockbox kind of account as a pass through, and then it comes into your operations account. So let's say a month, something happens, like Snowmageddon happens, your NOI falls below certain numbers, they can come and seize that lockbox and not release the funds to you, except for paying taxes or insurance or your mortgage kind of stuff. So you really want to go and understand, if you're working with a bridge lender, have that call with them to see what are the terms under which this lockbox comes into effect, what kind of reporting they want to see from you, what are the NOI targets, et cetera. You have to meet NOI's net operating income, what are some monthly collection numbers they want you to meet, et cetera. And under what are their thresholds for various things to come into effect. You want to have that conversation for sure. That's why it's not as straightforward as Fannie or Freddie. With Fannie and Freddie, you kind of know how it is. Okay, you need to maintain a debt service coverage ratio of this much. They'll tell you that. And then when it falls below that, you'll be placed on a watch list. If it falls even below that, they might have some action, but you'll get several warning letters kind of stuff, right? With a bridge lender, every lender, it's like private companies, right? They can make their own rules. Every bridge lender could be completely different. So when you go into bridge debt, I would say that is your biggest risk. The fantastic thing about bridge debt is if your deal is performing well, your exit is easy. So at 18 months, 24 months, whatever your term might be, when you want to exit the loan, sell the property or get out of the loan, refi to something else, you're not paying a huge prepayment penalty typically. Versus a Fannie loan, you'll have this huge yield maintenance penalty that's killing a lot of deals right now. They have $2, $3, $4 million kind of prepayment penalties. And so that's something to be watchful for. I'm not sure who is Rob sharing screen, but anyway.
Yeah, I saw that too.
So that's about bridge loans, but we were talking about service providers and stuff at the beginning. You want to surround yourself with a lot of different people. Multifamily is a total team sport. You cannot do it alone. You need all these partners to help you and keep you from making mistakes because it's millions of dollars and other people's money involved. But going back to how to find your first deal, right? Being able to raise capital is one of the biggest strengths you can always have. Today, you might say, oh my gosh, who's going to give me money? I don't know anybody who'll give me even $100, let alone $50,000. That's okay. Start reading books. Start figuring out who are the people who can afford the 50K first. How do I get access to this exclusive country club where there's people with this 50K kind of money, right? Those are the steps. Do you have a dentist? Do you have a doctor? Do you have a lawyer? Do you have an accountant? Any of those people could probably refer you to that kind of high net worth individuals as an example, right? And then you go read these books like Hunter's book. Then you figure out, okay, is this something I want to be doing? Or do I want to find partners who love talking, marketing, and raising capital while I do the rest of the work? Maybe asset management is what you really want to do. Or maybe underwriting deals is what you want to do. Maybe hanging out with brokers, having those broker relationships is what you enjoy doing. So you get awarded the deals, right? Because this is a relationship business ultimately. So people who know, like, and trust you will invest with you. People who know, like, and trust you will also be the ones to award you the deals or who'll want to partner with you, right? So find a way to make it appealing. Like, let's say you're going to a meetup next week and there's this cool speaker that you want to have a connection with. I would go do some homework, right? I would go do some homework on who's this, like Joe Fairless. I'm just going to throw out an example of a really famous guy, right? I'm going to definitely read his book. I'm probably going to go listen to his podcast. I'm going to read some recent news articles he's done. And then I'm going to talk intelligently. I'm going to have my questions already lined up and queued up before I go to that meetup, right? So that he knows, hey, I'm an avid fan and I have a really specific question that's not answered in your book or in your podcast. And I'm going to try to make an impression and a connection. And then I'm going to invite them to be a speaker at my meetup or my podcast as an example, right? If you want to build a connection with someone, how do you go about it? It's just like with a job interview. I want a job at, I don't know, company X. I'm going to find somebody who works at company X. I'm going to look in LinkedIn and see who are all the people I have a connection with, who can connect me to this person, get me a really nice intro. So like Andy runs a meetup. Let's say he brings a really cool guest one time and you want to be friends with that guest. You can get Andy to give you an intro, right? Maybe it's Joe Fairless next week. So you go to Andy and say, hey, how do I get introduced to this person? Can you send me an intro? I really want to talk to this person. I want to bring them as a guest to my meetup, right? So pick out your few favorite people, find a way to get to know them, and then they are your future partners, but also see what is their strength. You may say, oh, they're so high above me. They have no use for me. Okay, probably, but they could be a mentor and advisor. They may not partner with you, but they could give you 2 or 3 good tips that's going to save you a lot of headache or actually thousands of dollars, right? One good tip from one good mentor can save you so much of heartache, so much of sleepless nights. So just because they can't partner with you, it doesn't mean you can't find value from just about anybody you meet in the space, right? What other ways can you get into a first deal? Your PMC company. So property management companies that are established in an area. And we just know somebody in this meetup who's a property manager in Atlanta. So we got to figure out, okay, what kind of properties do you manage? What size are these properties? What company do you work for? Do they own other properties? Do they run other properties in that area? Ooh, are any properties coming up for sale? Okay, You find that out, and then what can you do? You can go do your homework on that property before it gets listed for sale. So you already have a heads up, right? Ahead of the population. And then when you get that 20-minute tour, you already have your questions for the broker versus the property management company. And then you say, oh, who's buying deals in Atlanta in that location? I need to find a sponsor who's established there so that I get awarded the deal and I can tie my name to them, right? So picking a target market is very, very helpful. Pick one market. Don't try to go anywhere is fine. Pick one market and get to know that market really well and get to know the players in that market, because they might be your best friend. Andy might have a property in your target market and he might be selling that property next year. So in 6 months from today, if you know Andy better and he's selling his property, if you can meet his price, he's probably going to sell it to you over somebody he doesn't know, who's also going to come to that same price, right? So the power of who you know and that network is priceless, again, to score your first deal. So if I had to figure out a process to acquire my first deal, it would be, what's the minimum size of property I want? What class of property do I want? So let's say I'm going to syndicate a deal that's at least 70 doors in this particular market, which was built in the 70s and up or 80s and up, for which the price is this much. This is my price range. Maybe it's only $6 to $8 million that I can afford. And I'm going to do that with 1 or 2 partners whose strengths complement mine. So write out a specific goal like that, right? A very, very specific goal, and don't deviate. So talking to Andy, let's say his market is Detroit, is somewhere in Michigan, parts of Michigan, and
sure.
That's not your market as an example, then Andy could connect you with somebody whose market is your target market. You may not partner with Andy, but he's going to help you find someone because he's well networked. I mean, he runs a meetup, right? That means he's out there. He's putting himself out there in social media, and he's got a different guest every month. So as an example, they can help you connect to people who are doing what you want to be doing. Ultimately, you want to be connected to people who are doing what you're doing, and then find a way for them to take you on. So once you write that little vision board, right? Have a vision board, have a very specific goal, right? And so like, look at this. Kathy has a goal, right? So she's going anywhere from Alabama to Colorado, I think. Is that just to me or is that to the whole world?
That's everybody.
Okay. So that's a good thing to put out there too in this chat box, right? If everyone here, we've got 10, 11 people, if everyone here put out their goal and we just made a table and said, these are the target markets, this is what they want to do, this is what they're looking from a partner. And just you do that with every group and meetup you go to, you're going to connect with people and you'll find a way to partner. So for me, if someone wants to partner with me on a deal in Dallas, this is what I say. We've got to get to know each other first, right? Before I can sign a loan with you, we've got to do what I call the business dating before the business marriage. So we got to do that. Then the next step is, well, what is your strength and what is my strength? Do you complement my weakness, right? Are you willing to do the work, or can you bring in a lot of money into a deal? And that's the process, I think, to quickly find partners to find a multifamily deal. Is what is your role? There are 3 major roles in a syndication. One of them is finding a deal, right? The broker relationships, the underwriting, the competitive market analysis to get awarded a deal. The second biggest part is the capital raise. You need to raise enough money to close the deal on time. And then you need to have the experience to execute a business plan to meet the numbers for the asset management piece. So of these 3 pieces, it's good to do at least 1 or 2 of them, and then find a partner whose strength is that third piece that you don't want to be doing or is not your strength. Does that help?
Mm-hmm. Very good. So one question for you. So, some people say, if you find a deal, money will come. And is that true? And, how do you, I guess in your experience, is that true?
I'm risk averse, so I'm not just going to find a deal. I'm not going to make an offer and sign a deal, be under contract for a deal, unless I also know who's going to fund it for me. Mm-hmm. So I don't believe that's fully true. I think there might be a rare case or two where if you found a really phenomenal deal that is so attractive that someone like a Joe Fairless might take it on, and then they'll give you a referral fee, yes. But you're not going to be the main GP on that deal if you don't already have your partners lined up, et cetera. Because if you just find a deal and you're not under contract for it and you show it to somebody, they'll probably take it. That's what people say. Or I think Michael Blanc would love to pay you a finder's fee, but that's about it. But if you want to be the sponsor and get a good GP share, which is the way you build wealth, you've got to have your partners lined up who can raise the equity needed for that deal. And you have to be realistic about it. So let's say you have 200 people in your database at any given time, maybe 30, 40 of them would be ready to invest, provided they like you and trust you and your deal meets their criteria. So that's a pretty small percentage. So keep that in mind when you're going into raising capital. And if someone who's never raised capital for you before tells you I can raise $2 million, you want to kind of vet that a little bit more. You want to say, in some way, show me proof that these people are ready. Because it's one thing to say, oh yeah, let me know when you have a deal, versus I have a deal, so share with them a past deal. And that's where the passive investment comes into play, because I just used examples of my passive deals and said, this is what I'm doing. Here's a passive deal. If I find another deal that meets this criteria, would you also invest alongside with me? And then, yeah or no. So no, I don't believe that money will automatically come just because you find a good deal. I believe you got to have all bases covered before you go into a deal.
That's great. Now, what tools do you recommend when you're doing syndication?
I mean, for tasks and efficiency, I mean, something like Asana that keeps you on track is great. If you think about, a CRM, you might already have something like ActiveCampaign, MailChimp, et cetera, whatever integrates into your investor tool, depending on where you're at in your syndication process. I mean, I heard that Juniper Square is like the ultimate. I've done passive investments with it, but that's also expensive. I think it costs you like $20K, versus there might be something else like Invest Next or Syndication Pro that might be more in the range of $2,000 a year. So you again have to see what tool fits your criteria, because you could even sign up for DocuSign when you get to that stage and you have a deal under contract. You could just use DocuSign as well. So starting out in my first couple of deals, I just had DocuSign. Now I actually have an account with an investor portal, but that takes time. What other tools do I use? I mean, I like Canva for my presentations. It's very handy. I like it as a better version of PowerPoint. I've learned to use the tool. I still have a lot to learn, but I've got one presentation already done in it. So now it's easy. I just go on modifying it. There's a Loom for videos. It's really good for creating short videos if you want to explain terminology to people, etc. And then you can just share that or send that along. What other productivity tools? Email management. I mean, like Time Block is probably one of the most important tools I use. And by that, I mean, when you decide what is your toughest task, the most brain power task you have to do, figure out the time of day that you're most efficient and kind of plan that time to do that toughest brain involving task. And then schedule all other tasks around it. So time block that for the hardest thing you have to do. So for me, underwriting, I really want to be focused when I'm looking at underwriting. So I'll block some times off when I know I'm going to be chasing deals. Like, okay, now there's a lull. I've stabilized one property. It's time to look again. I'll start blocking a couple of hours a day purely to look at deals myself. So accordingly, or, investor calls, you may want to have it at a certain time of day. And then I have my PMC calls, like for my asset management, certain days, et cetera.
That's great. One more question from my side. So you have 4,000 doors, you have 300 million in assets. What challenges come along with that?
So most of them are passive. So remember that. I don't own those properties,
Gotcha.
right? So somebody else's headache. That's what's great about passive investing. I only have 4 properties at a time. So as one property sells, I'll buy another property. I'm never going to have 25 properties unless I have other partners and we scale up and we have an institutional level. And I'm not looking at that. Like that's not in my even 3-4 year forecast. So passive investing is just like the stock market. Am I going to be worried that Amazon is doing something? Not really. I mean, I hope they make money for me, but that's about it. So passive investing is kind of like that. I keep a watch on the financials. If I see things dipping, I kind of nag them and I say, okay, you need to either work on this or you need to sell and give me my shares back, right? That's about the extent of me and passive. In the active deals, 4 deals is my capacity. I literally have 1/2 a day allocated to each property. I spend my time on it. I have my weekly calls, or I go visit if something major is going on. Like tomorrow we have an inspection at one of our properties, but that's my bandwidth, right? So, if you talk about scaling and, making more money and those kind of things, I would just, in my world, just buy larger properties. I'm not going to buy more properties. I'm not going to have 10, 60 doors. I'm going to try to buy 100 doors and then 200 doors and so on. That's how I'm going to scale, so that it's still 3 or 4 main properties I have to look after. And I feel good about that, because once I acquire one, that first few months of takeover, it involves a lot of close scrutiny as you're getting a property management company on board. So I don't want to be distracted with 6 properties, all at once. So that's how I do it, because I'm a very, I guess, detail-oriented asset manager. So one at a time is what works for me, because you set the right tone at the beginning, it's so much easier. Then you get to cruising altitude, it's super easy, versus you leave them to do whatever they want at the beginning, then it's very hard to regroup them and say, oh no, this is how we do business. No, it's easier just right from the start to set the tone. So I literally take my laptop and I'll camp out at my property for 1 day a week when it's a new property. So I'll just be in the back room. Whenever they need my help, they'll come and ask me questions, or I'll just, shut down and go look at a unit. I'll say, okay, this is what we're going to do with this unit. This is what we're not going to do. And so here you are authorized right away. You don't have to wait for 10 emails and make a decision. Here you go. Here's a decision for you. And that helps me a lot. I just camp at a property. I take my laptop. I'm productive. And when they need me, I'm there. And, it gets done. So 4 is the max at a time of active involvement.
That's good advice. What other questions do we have from the audience? Anything else?
You have your plan? Everybody has a plan? Has everyone written out a vision board?
I got a question for you. When you're on site of these properties, what are you looking for? Are you kind of overseeing everything, or are you just kind of taking notes?
I'm a silent observer. If they're a competent project management company, property management company, and they're doing their job, that's great. Let them keep doing it. I don't want to get in the way. So I'll be in one of the side office rooms. I'll set up office there and I'll be working away just like this, whatever I'm normally doing. But if they have a question, they can come and ask me. But one of the first things I would want to do is I'd want to walk all the vacants, right? I'd want to look through, is there any lender required repair? What are we going to do about that? I'd want to walk around and say, and do my data collection for my business plan. Let's say I want to improve the landscape. Let's say I want to improve the signage. Let's say I want to go back and check on a couple of units to see if washer dryer connections make sense. So whatever is on my to-do list, that's my physical, let me take detailed notes kind of visit. I probably have a vendor meeting me there for some of those projects at that time. So I'm just there because they'll give you a wide time window. Oh, I'm going to come between 10 and 12. Guess what? Just come to the leasing office. I'll be there. And here's my number, kind of thing. So it's also my chance to observe quietly from a background, how they run this. And really in a full day's operations, you also get a feel for the traffic that comes through. Okay, how many new leads are they getting? What kind of complaints are they hearing from tenants? Now that it's a new management company taking over, typically what happens is when someone knows a property is for sale and it's under contract to be sold and the hard money is already obtained, and the management kind of tends to take it easy because they know they're out the door and the new management's going to come over. So a lot of things could be a little bit neglected. So you just never know. So you want to look at Yelp. You want to know what complaints they have about the property. And then you want to see how much of an issue that is. You want to see if you want to do a survey of the tenants. Let's say you're planning reserved or covered parking. You want to do tenant surveys. A lot of systems are not set up yet when a new PMC takes over. So you want to kind of understand, okay, if you don't have a system set up, how are you documenting all these things? And am I aware of it? Because a lot of things can be just lost if it's not on a system logged in. Where it says work orders, what are you getting as work orders the first 2 weeks, right? What are the issues we're seeing? Are we saying the same problem? Every time it's a leak, it's an AC leak, or, every time there's a plumbing problem there, or especially if it rained or something, that's a great opportunity to observe where the leaks are and all the water is, gathering in one place kind of stuff. So there's just so much data you can gather. So I basically, instead of working from wherever my office is, I make that my office 1 day a week when I take over a new property. And I learned so much from that, I already know what I have
So
to do.
when you're interviewing a new property management company,
Mhm.
are you looking for, do you have an idea of like, okay, they have to have Yardi, they have to have this kind of systems? Are you looking for particular systems, or is that one of the questions that you ask if they have a system at all?
So I only go with, like, I'm in Dallas and there's hundreds of property management companies, but there are 5 or 6 that are super popular that people seem really happy with. So I always start with a referral. So I already have data now from 20 passive investments in Dallas as an example. Who are the PMCs, what systems they use, et cetera. But if I don't know it, that would be my first question is, why are you happy with this PMC? And what is the one thing you would change if you could about this PMC? What are they really good at, right? And sometimes it depends on the on-site too. Even though the company may be really great about some things, the on-site at this property versus that property can make a whole new difference, right? So let's say my property that I'm acquiring, my subject property, the biggest problem is occupancy. Let's say I have a high turnover and my occupancy is getting close to that 90%. I'm kind of worried. Okay, so then I want a leasing machine. So then I tell them, my PMC, whoever you put in here has to be a leasing machine with a proven track record of just leasing. They got to believe in this property and they got to go like a tiger and go after this and get me this rent and lease, right? Versus somebody else, I may say, well, we're getting a lot of complaints. We want somebody who's pretty reasonable and nice and friendly and open and approachable so we can improve this customer. Our occupancy is pretty good. The rents are pretty high already. I'm not looking to increase it a huge amount this first year. So I want more of a customer service, happy, pleasing everybody, easily approachable kind of personality. So those are the kind of conversations I have with my PMC. But as far as the interview itself goes, like we interviewed 3 different PMC companies this week. I look at them, I asked them to provide a budget to me, right? So give me a budget of how you'll run this property. Here's your OM, T12 rent roll, et cetera. Come back to me with your data, your ALN data. And once I look at their budget, that's one of the biggest reasons why I would look at the differences in budgets across 3 companies and then my own budget that I need, to which I've underwritten this deal. And I would ask for all the outliers. Because generally the property management fee is 3.5%, et cetera. And then someone has, a 20, 30K difference in one of the line items. Then I want to see, why is your personal expense so much more or so much less? Or why is your marketing expense so much more or less? I'm 100% occupied. Why do you need this much for marketing? This is a very high traffic area anyway. Let's go use our Facebook and other free resources. I don't see the need to sign up for all these services, right? So those are all part of my interview questions. So once I get budgets from these companies, I have my interview questions written out, and then I ask them to explain it. And then, me and my partners interview them, and then we make a decision. Who do we feel the highest confidence in achieving that rent growth? Like one company might come back and say, oh, I can give you a 12% rent growth. I'm like, really? Where do you own properties in this area? Where do you run properties in this area to which you have a confidence of getting that? Give me the data that backs you getting a 12% rent growth. Versus 2 other PMCs are saying they can get 4 to 5% rent growth. Why are you telling me you can get 12%? Where's your confidence coming from? Show me some data. So all of that is part of my interview questions for the PMC. But as far as the original question, which is the data systems that they use, they use Resman, they use, RealPage, different kinds of reporting systems, and you have to log in and get to know them. So once you employ a PMC, I have a separate call with their ID department where just like this on Zoom, I'll record it and I'll have them walk me through. I want to get these 10 reports on a weekly basis. How do I log in and get them? And I walk through that sequence and I learn it so that at midnight when I can't sleep, I'm going to go in there and log in and find out what data I need for myself without having to send an email and ask for that information.
So do you find that's a good, I've never heard somebody say that. So are all your property managers that you're working with allow you to go in and pull those reports? Or does some of them say, oh, no, don't worry about it, just email Ed so they can clean the report?
Oh, no. Every day I should be able to log on any second I want and look at that ledger. And I should see that the numbers make sense. Why did you charge $700 today in Home Depot charges? What did you buy? Why is that? What exactly
Yeah.
did that go towards? We are 100% occupied. You didn't have any make ready happening today. I'm looking at the list of work orders. This doesn't tie up. Are you sure this was intended for this property, or did you mischarge us? You got
So
to keep on.
your access to their system is like an admin. So
No. I only get to view reports. I don't get to change anything. I don't have
Okay.
edit access. I only have view access, but I have a login system to get in and view these things.
That's interesting. You're for the first one I've heard that has done that or said that. That's a good
I'm a
way to
very
do it.
detail-oriented asset manager. I'm just like running my household, you know? I need to look at those receipts, and you got to balance your checkbook. In the old days, that's how we used to say it. Nowadays, I look at my online statements and make sure every number and every line item makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're going to take you for a ride and you'll never know why $700 was charged to you instead of the property they managed down the street.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I like the fact that when you said you can log in anytime, you're not
Mhm.
waiting for that next weekly meeting.
Oh,
You
no.
can't sleep, like you said. I'm gonna go in and right then and there, when that's fresh in their mind, hey, what is this 700
Mhm.
bucks?
Yep.
Because they can't say, well, hang on, we'll get back to you. And then if
Mhm.
you don't follow up with them, guess what? You'll never hear the explanation. That's good.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I see a question. When considering a deal as an LP, do you ask for the T12 or the rent roll? I ask for the underwriting. So I get to view the underwriting, and they show that to me as part of the presentation. So the underwriting will show me the cash flow, the rent increases. It'll show me their net income, their top line revenue number, their collections they have planned for the year. How do they get there? Is there any other income? What is their economic vacancy? So you need to know what all these terms mean, because economic vacancy is another assumption that can completely change your numbers. Another big one to know is the exit cap, because in a lot of underwriting tools, you can change that one small number, which is an exit cap, and totally change the returns of a deal. So I think I'm going to actually share screen and show that as an example. Okay, so let me see if I can do this.
Yeah, let me get this set up here.
I think
Okay.
it is.
There,
I think it's
I just-
allowing me. So this is just an old deal. This is not a current deal. So I'm just going to pull up an old deal so that we're not. And so if you look at this deal, right, it looks like it's a $9.3 million purchase. And they're saying a passive investor can get 94% back, right? Is everyone with me?
Yep.
Okay. Now watch this, 94% and 8% cash flow, right? So let's go here. And this is called the reversion cap. They've assumed 7%. I'm going to change this to 6%. Now look at the returns. What is that? Crazy, right? 150% return is your total. Just from changing that one number. Now let me change this to 5%. What do you think it's going to do? 230%. So
That's typical Dallas, though. That's what Dallas does, doesn't it?
true, but you want to start with a conservative assumption is what I'm trying to say. And that if somebody promises you everything as a best case scenario, then you don't have any padding in your numbers in case things don't go well, right? So that's sort of your padding in there. So you don't want to always be promoting best case scenarios and then not deliver. So under promise and over deliver. So promise a more conservative return and then beat it. And then you'll have your investors coming back. So knowing the effect of cap rate, the assumption of an exit cap rate, which means what is the cap rate going to be when I sell this property? So knowing that and then using that number can completely change your returns. So the questions I ask as a passive investor, I have a checklist I can share with anyone. If you visit my website and put in a request, share your checklist, I can send it as an email, or you can email me. I think in the chat box, I put my email and I can send it to you. But I've got a checklist to vet a sponsor because, you know, with 20 passive deals, I've learned a lot on what should be done, what is good to do, and what not to do. And I'm happy to share that. But any questions to get your first deal? I think that was one of our main topics for this session. Everyone got a roadmap to get your first deal? First large deal, 100 doors, 70 doors, 80 doors, not a duplex. We're not talking duplex here. We're talking team members, multifamily. So underwriting deals is good, but if that's not your strength, you can always outsource that. So you can focus on raising capital. And the same lines, broker relationships is a very big piece of getting awarded deals. So make sure you're always talking to brokers, whoever are the movers and shakers. Like if you want to do a deal in Houston, you need to know Newmark. They control about 50% of that market. So as an example, right? So I don't know in your markets who are the players, but you definitely want to get plugged into those players. You want to start getting invited to all the broker events, those happy hours, those, a lot of guys go golf with these brokers, and that's how they get deals awarded. And that's something I don't do, but I try to do other stuff, which is, hey, I own properties here. I've actually closed deals here. So come on, get me a deal kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I coffee, breakfast kind of stuff is what I do.
Great. Any other questions? It was fantastic, Sandhya. Really appreciate it. Now,
Awesome.
one last question for you.
Mhm.
How can this community help you in your multifamily journey?
Well, just keep chugging. And if you have a win and you learned something from here, send me a quick note. That would be really nice to hear. What is your goal? How are you going to get there? You going to get there in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? What are your targets? Because it's easy after Halloween and Thanksgiving, get into the holiday rush. And sadly, before you know it, the year is over and it's 2022. So September 23rd, you've got 3 months, but really it's more like 6 to 8 weeks to take some strong action, right? What are you going to do so that when you go into 2022, you're going to make some moves? And I would love to hear that.
That's great.
What is your market? What are you going to do?
Yeah, fantastic. Well, we really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time tonight, Sandhya. Really appreciate you sharing all your knowledge, and we wish you well.
Thank you.
And appreciate everything you've done for us tonight.
Awesome. Enjoy your evening.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.